All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Welcome. Freaking pumped, dude. Thanks for coming. We got Brandon Lee. A bunch of people are like, when I started this podcast, are like 5 different people like, Scott, you got to get Brandon on. Like, Scott, you got to get Brandon on. And then I emailed Kevin, and he's like, dude, you got to get Brandon on. Kevin runs one of the local stations here that Brandon's on, but you've had a crazy background.
Yeah.
You got a dope book. You're doing some crazy shit.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
Give our listeners like a background. Like there's a million things you're doing. You've had just an inspiring story, but like kind of give the listeners and the viewers like a little background.
Yeah, I feel like I've lived 50 lives. First off, I will start off by saying I feel like I have lived so many lives. I grew up in Orange County, California, Laguna Beach, California, was a surf rat, soccer player. And, you know, from the outside looking in, honestly, you grow up in Orange County, California, people think you just have like the most perfect life.
For sure, especially Laguna.
Especially Laguna Beach.
Laguna.
I mean, I tell people at like high school, people would just like look out the windows and watch the waves and like not listen to the teachers.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. Like growing up in Southern California is awesome. I knew I wanted to get into news. Back in junior high school, I was watching the news with my family. And I remember like watching the news as a 7th grader and being like, I want to do that. My parents were like, what? I was like, be that reporter. And sure enough, like that's eventually what happened. I was able to play soccer in Europe for a little while in Gothenburg, Sweden, which was
So you look more
amazing.
You look more like a soccer player than like a news anchor. Like
I know.
this is my guy. He's got the tats. Like this like the news anchor. This is like awesome.
I will say this. It does throw people off all the time. When I'm on an airplane, people are like, "Are you Adam Levine?" And then like, but you know, like tattoos have a stigma, right?
For sure.
There's still even to this day a stigma attached to tattoos.
100%.
News anchors typically aren't fully sleeved.
I have not
or
seen
have
it.
body wraps, right? I'm covered from the waist up. A lot of that, though, the crazy thing is a lot of stuff with the tattoos go back to like my drug addiction. So I actually got involved in drugs at age 15.
Wow.
Which is really early. But
what were you doing?
Yeah, cocaine was the first drug I did.
Wow.
Yeah, cocaine was the first drug I did and had access to it with money. Growing up in Orange County, our parents had money. So
There's
that means
a lot of cocaine in Orange County.
because the kids have money, because the parents have money, right? So when your parents have money, that means the kids are getting a larger allowance, and a lot of times they're spending that on drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
And so, and my parents were working all the time. They thought what was most important was providing a really good life and a really nice home, and so they were working all the time. The problem was they just weren't around ever, and so that allowed us to kind of go off the rails at such a young age. You know, looking back, people ask me all the time, like, how have you, of all people at age 15 with so many resources, such privilege, right? How did you end up a drug addict at age 15? And finally, what led me down that dark path was I was just repeatedly molested as a child for years by my...
How old were you?
I believe it started when I was about 6 and probably ended when I was about 10 years old.
Holy shit.
So it was a long time. And it was my piano teacher and one of my youth soccer coaches. And so, you know, looking back, it's really easy for me to understand that unhealed trauma that at age 15, we can't rationalize at age 15, but understanding that just the moment I did that cocaine took me out of the reality of the pain, right? It just made me feel numb. It made me feel good. So I kept chasing that feel good.
Was it like instant? Like when you did the cocaine, it was like, damn.
Instant.
Wow.
Instant. And then, you know, like but here's the thing, like we were taught as kids, like work hard, play hard. So I always felt like I went to NYU, I was in film school, I was working at the Today Show, and I always felt like, listen, as long as I'm getting good grades, as long as I have a great job, I have a roof over my head, I have a car, then I'm not doing anything wrong. The thing with drug addiction is that we surround ourselves with people who are doing the same drugs that we are. So we're being mirrored that same behavior. So we don't think that we're doing anything wrong. So when we're in that setting, we're like, oh, Joe's doing, you know, meth with me and so-and-so's doing GHB.
This is normal.
This is normal.
Yeah.
God, now so much years in recovery under my belt, I take like a bird's eye view and I look down. It's actually, no, that circle is actually very small and that's not normal. And you just surrounded yourself with normal drug addictive behavior, thinking and convincing yourself that what you're doing is normal, which was not. I'll skip a lot of the war stories and just go straight to the end. I was I was a reporter at KTLA 5 in Los Angeles.
You're in LA reporting.
I'm
okay.
in LA as a reporter now. It's a huge station. It's the number 2 market.
100%.
So the news would get over at about 10:30 at night, and I would do drugs in the parking lot at KTLA. The drug of choice for me at that time was GHB.
What's GHB?
It's a date rape drug. It's the liquid date rape drug.
Wow.
So I was literally giving myself the date rape drug because it like takes you to the brink of a blackout. But if you do too much, you do black out. And so I ended up, and sex addiction was also part of it.
Is it all? There's just a ton of stuff.
Oh yeah, it was like
Asking for a friend.
Oh yeah, right. You're like, asking for a friend. Yeah, you know, for me, it was just so multi-pronged. So I had sex addiction, I had drug addiction. So then the sex and the drugs became intertwined. Mm-hmm. And so anytime I wanted to have sex, drugs were involved because that's the only way I knew how to do both of them. Mm-hmm. And so I used to sneak away from my regular friends. We'd go to the bars in LA until like 1:30 in the morning till last call. I would tell my friends, hey, I'm going home. And they all thought I was going home. My closest friends had no idea of the second life, the double life that I lived.
Wow.
And so I would leave LA, go down to in Hollywood, go down to the slums of LA. And this is actually a nice descriptive word for what they really were. I would hang out at brothels, and that's like putting it nicely. Wow. And so I used to get high, and I'll never forget, there was a guy that offered me a meth pipe, and I said yes because I was already, my inhibitions were already lowered because I was on GHB, and I said yes. I'd stayed away from that drug knowing that my personality probably wasn't the best thing. The moment I hit it, I was done. I knew, like, I was looking at myself in a mirror taking a hit off that meth pipe, and I saw the devil enter my body. Like, my eyes were evil. And the scary part is that actually got me excited. Like, I got excited, that dark, man, like, I was chasing it.
Why did you get excited?
Because it was all the untreated trauma from my life. It was the physical and mental abuse. It was like coming
out, like the drug brought it out, kind of.
Yeah.
And it felt good to like let it. It felt
good.
Felt good to come out.
And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and being like, this is going to take, and I remember saying that, this is going to take you down. And I looked at myself and said, let's fucking go.
Wow, like let's dance with the devil kind of deal.
100%. So for a period of 6 months, we'd go out to Palm Springs, and even darker. I almost left this part out of my book because I thought it would just like...
It was too much.
It would too much, and people would just stick on this. At the depths of that meth addiction, I would go out to Palm Springs, and I was doing two things. I was trying to get HIV, so I was what you call a bug chaser, and I was hanging out with people who were Satan worshipers, full on 666, and
in Palm
Springs. And it was only when I was on meth that I had those dark thoughts.
It comes out.
Oh yeah,
the dark.
It was like it was just unlocking the devil inside of me, and it was just coming out. And so when I was in downtown LA, I overdosed at a brothel, and woke up days later in a coma at Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital in Los Angeles. The team of doctors, they got me out of the coma. They brought me back to life. When I overdosed, I cracked my head open, and so there was a lot of bleeding in my brain, and the chief neurosurgeon comes down to me as I'm coming out of the coma, and he looks at me and he goes, Brandon, we're gonna have to do brain surgery on you tonight now that you're out of the coma. We had to wait until you were awake, and then we got to go put you back under to do brain surgery. I looked at the chief neurosurgeon and I said, doctor, can you hear me? And he just has this puzzled look on his face. He's like, yeah. I was like, okay, if you can hear me, that means we're all good. Go get my clothes because I'm not having brain surgery. I'm leaving. He goes, Brandon, you can't. I was like, yes, I can. I'm going to walk out of this hospital. Just go get me my clothes. And the nurse standing next to the doctor goes, Brandon, you didn't come in with any clothes. So I said, okay. Had so many monitors hooked up to me, ripped them all off, had the hospital robe on that like shows your ass out the back, tied it up, had those socks with the rubber things on them, and I walked straight out of the hospital against medical advice. I still have that little piece of paper that I signed that day. Walked down Hollywood Boulevard, found my truck. The last thing I ever remember was getting in my truck, opening up the glove compartment, getting out the meth pipe, and getting high. I woke up in that same ER a week later, the same team of doctors around me, and they looked at me and said, Brandon, you need help. And they put me in this isolation room, and I was breaking down crying, thinking I was alone. And this little nurse had to be 5'0", comes over to my hospital bed. She holds my hand, and she goes, Brandon, do you believe in God? And I said, no, I don't. And she goes, that's okay, because God still believes in you. She goes, make me this promise, Brandon. I've saved your life twice in the last 2 weeks. I had $10 in my purse. I'm going to give you this $10. When they eventually release you, I want you to go to my church. They have an AA meeting every Thursday night. It happened to be a Thursday. And I made her that promise. And I went to that AA meeting on that Thursday night. It was this church off Melrose in Mansfield. And I've been sober ever since that day.
How long ago was that?
That was back in February 22nd, 2010.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And, I actually don't even really tell people my sobriety date. I don't even celebrate birthdays anymore. I don't even collect chips anymore. As a matter of fact, I took all my chips and I took them back to an AA meeting. I cashed them all in. Because to me, the quality of time is so much more important than the quantity of time. And the majority of people in recovery do relapse. And I want to take away that shame of having them come back feeling like they have to start over at day one. Because if you have 5 years and you relapse, you don't lose that 5 years of lived experience. You dust yourself off and you continue the race. And the best analogy that I give to that for those people who have relapsed, and especially during a pandemic, there's been a ton of relapse.
There's a lot going on. A ton.
So my message to them is this. I ran the New York City Marathon back in 2017. I was trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I was racing and my body cramped up at mile marker number 17. I collapsed on the side of the road. And this race official comes up to me and I was breaking down crying, right? Because I was not going to qualify at that point. And I was running my butt off and I was making qualifying time. And so she looked at me and she goes, Brandon, why are you so upset? And I'm like, I'm trying to qualify. And she goes, are you trying to win the race? Because they already finished about an hour ago. She goes, listen, you're cramping up. She goes, I'm going to get you electrolytes. I'm going to massage your leg and you're going to get back up. You're going to walk to the finish line. You're going to finish this race. Did that race official tell me, Brandon, you got to go back to Staten Island, start back at mile marker number 1 and rerun this race?
That's a good point.
You don't lose all the mileage that you have run up to that point. You dust yourself off and you continue the race.
Love that.
Right? So let's get off this whole thing of like, when we go to an AA meeting, what's the two things that happen? Hey, what's your name? Tell me. Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott. I'm an alcoholic.
What's the second question? How much time you got? Without fail. What's your name? How much time you got? Subconsciously, what we're doing, we're sizing somebody up to take an authoritative stance.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that.
So if I have 12 years and Scott, you say you got 5, great, I got 12 years. So all of a sudden, I've got authority over you by the quantity of time. But you know what? When I speak around the country, because I speak at mental health summits, every single time without fail, I would have a guy with 30 plus years of recovery come up to me and go, I want you to be my sponsor. At that time, I probably had like 7 or 8 or 9 years of recovery. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I got 7 years of recovery. You got 30 plus years. And he goes, I know, but I want what you have. And I said, well, wait a second. You want what I have. So what's your life like at 30 plus years? It's awful. It's chaotic. And I'm like, so that's what I have to look forward to just by collecting chips?
Yeah.
No. So what I learned was somebody with 2 years can have their life together. So what I challenge people to say this, what's your name? Scott. How's your life today? Tell me what your life is like today. And let me know if that's the kind of life I want. You know, so that's always, whenever I have a chance to speak, I always tell people during a pandemic, during isolation, there's been a ton of relapse. Who cares?
When I want to go back to it, I was thinking about this before. We talked before the show a little bit, and I talked a little bit. I first off, I admire like your authenticity and your openness, because it is so hard, but like you take it to like another level, like I was like, which I love. But the one thing that really resonated with me was you talk about this double life. Yeah. And I've experienced that in a fall that I had. And I think there's some people out there that might not be, you might not be doing heroin, but like there's a double life going on. And for me, that was what was really hard, was like the lie. And why like this, like for me, like even a little lie like freaks me out. You know what I mean? Like that feeling of a double life. Can you explain like maybe that feeling, or like maybe you've seen that insight with other people? Yeah. Like I just can relate to that, and I feel like there's a lot of people that maybe even little ways have this sneaky dark energy of like a double life. For sure. So people lie because of shame. Yeah. They're shameful about something, so they're lying about it. Right? So it's the reason. And shame's like the big shame is everything. Shame's what brings addiction on, right? Shame. Yes. Shame and trauma. Shame and unhealed trauma. Okay. So
And that's the reason why I came so publicly open about me being sexually abused as a child. It was actually during the Christine Blasey Ford hearing when Justice Kavanaugh was going through his Senate confirmation hearings, and she had come forward as a professor saying he raped me as a teenager. And people were like, dude, that happened 30 years ago. Why'd she wait 30 years? She must be lying. And this brings me back to the shame part. And I sat there. I was actually anchoring the news, and I kind of sat there. And there was, I won't name them. I had a couple of coworkers on Air Talent say the same thing on Facebook. Why should we believe her if she waited 30 years?
Yeah.
So I individually went to those people in my newsroom, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to go public. And I said, because that was at age 37 for me. I had never told anybody,
no one,
that I had been repeatedly molested as a child. Why? Because I carried that burden of shame. I carried the burden. I thought people would always look at me as somebody disgusting, used up, washed up, and used goods. That's how I felt. So out of shame, I never told anybody. Now, had I told somebody early on in life, perhaps I could have gone to therapy. Perhaps I could have treated that childhood trauma that would not have led me down such a dark path. What people need to understand, it is my belief that addiction is born out of untreated trauma. Now, what we can't do is compare traumas to one another. Right?
Yeah.
Because what may be traumatic to you, Scott, might not be traumatic to me. And what may have been traumatic to me may not be traumatic to you. And I never want anybody to say, well, God, I was never molested repeatedly or physically abused, so I shouldn't have these problems. And I'm not going to speak up about them.
The feelings, though, are similar. Like, we can relate to feeling. What I've learned is you can relate to feelings and be with someone like in a 12-step group or group therapy and hone into the feeling, not like the actual experience.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But, you know, going back to that, the reason why I see people living double lives all the time, right? But they're living that double life because they're trying to put out a projected image of what they want people to see. I know that very well. Like, I wanted people to see me as this awesome anchor and reporter. I didn't want them to see me as the slums of, you know, a junkie out on the streets of LA, right? So that's projected image. People do that. Again, living a double life is nothing more than living a life of shame. Because if you're not shameful about it, then why wouldn't you just be open about it?
Yeah.
Now, adding to that, I have not spoken publicly about this. What I'm about to share with you, but I will now because I've healed from it. Now, mind you, I do 5 hours of therapy a week.
Okay.
5 hours of therapy, 2 hours on Tuesday and 3 hours on Thursday.
What kind of therapist do you see?
So on Tuesdays, it's a both of them are trauma therapists, specialized trauma therapists. There's a difference. So 2 hours of talk therapy on Tuesdays, 3 hours with a shaman who is also a certified trauma therapist.
Wow.
So through breathing techniques, I'm able to drop in after 20 minutes of deep breath work with him.
Are you dropping into the trauma?
I drop into the trauma. And I started that back in January. I'm going to tell you why I started that modality in January. So starting in April of last year, I was violently shaking at night. Violently. Not like shivers like I'm cold. If there was a camera on me, it would look like somebody was performing an exorcism on me at night. I was not sleeping. I was like violently shaking. That happened every single night up until January. And it got so dark for me in January. And mind you,
this is recent after you've gone through all this shit.
This is 6 months ago.
Ooh.
This is somebody who has a ton of experience in recovery. This is somebody who, at the drop of a hat, 5 CEOs of major treatment centers here in Arizona would drop everything in their lives, come find me, and take me in. Okay? I have every resource available to me. In January, I came home from work every night, and I sat on the edge of my bed and thought about taking my life because I could not see a way out. And every night I sat there and said, this is going to be the night. Each time I did that, I'd start to get visions of my nephew Brooklyn in my head. And when I did that, that kept me alive that night. But the reason why, and I have a scheduled therapy appointment every Tuesday, it does not move from my calendar. It's every Tuesday. And I hop on my Zoom call with my therapist on Tuesday, and she looks at me. She goes, Brandon, something came over me over the last 3 days, and I just have to come outright and ask you, are you thinking about taking your life? And I said, yes, I am. And she goes, okay. She goes, we're going to get you in with Toby, the shaman, beginning that Thursday. I started doing that deep breath work, came on Thursday, and I dropped back. I woke up out of that somewhat hypnosis state with him. My entire shirt was ripped open. My downstairs neighbor, I opened up to a barrage of texts after 3 hours. She goes, are you okay? Because she heard me screaming. Things came up from my early childhood that I did not consciously remember as an adult. That is how deeply stored that trauma was in the lower amygdala of my brain. That is where the trauma is stored. Things like my parents having sex in front of me, I would have to watch. And a lot of other abuse. But I didn't remember that consciously as an adult. All that PTSD was coming to surface. It will always come to surface at some point. It started last April for me. And for the last 5 months, today, I'm the happiest I have ever been in my life. Full stop. Happier than I was 2 years ago in recovery. Happier than I was 5 years ago in recovery. And it's all through healing that inner child, that childhood trauma. And I share that with people, and I'm sharing that with you today because I'm going to start speaking more openly about it. Because people always say, just pick up the phone, ask for help. That strategy doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
So we as collective minds have to figure out a way to change our strategy to reach people who are suffering in silence with mental health. The reason why I didn't come out outright, and mind you, I was shaking violently for a year, suicidal ideation to the point of really wanting to take my life because I did not see a way out of the darkness. And I didn't pick up the phone. And I didn't ask for help. So how can I expect somebody else to? So that whole thing, just pick up the phone, call this number, ask for help. The only way I believe that we can do that is for people like me to speak out, to say that, yes, Brandon thought about taking his life and I had suicidal ideation. Because if we just make it so open and so talked about, then it just becomes easier. Right? Because then it'd just be easier for somebody to go like, shit, if Brandon, high profile position in Arizona, is comfortable enough speaking about this, then I shouldn't carry any burden of shame. So why do I have shame if Brandon's so open and talking about it?
Yeah.
And again, it all comes down to shame, which is the reason why shame and stigma kills.
Do you think that's part of your purpose? I
know it is.
Yeah.
I know it is. And I can't say which network, but a network. I was going to go to a network station, a big station, and I did an interview with AZ Central when they found out I was leaving. And he asked me, like, what are you going to do? And I couldn't announce, like, what I was going to go do and, like, what station. Just couldn't say anything yet. And so, but I also knew that I said, hey, I'm going to write a book about mental health. I'm going to go publicly speak about mental illness and depression, anxiety, and drug addiction. And they, in that quote, I said to the reporter at AZ Central, I said, listen, you need to really understand this. My passion is telling people stories. I love telling people stories. I love getting to sit down with somebody, get to know them, share their story, and broadcast it. That's my passion. It is not my purpose in life. News is not my purpose in life. I didn't survive umpteen overdoses so I can make money reading a teleprompter. Okay, that is not why my higher power, my guardian angel, my spirit guide saved my life. Okay, so that I can just live a selfish, happy life. Come on. My purpose in life is to speak out every time I'm asked, speak around the country, share my story so openly. And if that, by doing that, closes the doors to some opportunities, then I shouldn't be there. Because if I had taken that job, This book would have never come out. I wouldn't be speaking in Atlanta, Georgia in 3 weeks from now at the largest mental health summit in the South. I wouldn't have a podcast. And let me also tell you this. I probably get 50 Facebook messages a day from viewers. Did you know not one of them is about what I just said on the news?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, bosses, if they watch this. Like, they're not messaging me and talking to me and commenting about, oh, that house fire, oh, that, you know, that police chaser, oh, this. It is always about Brandon. I got one this morning. Brandon, my son is on the streets of LA. He's a heroin addict. I just got off the phone with him. He's asking me to wire him more money. What do I do? Okay. That's an Arizona viewer.
Yeah.
Not talking to me about news. Talking to me about something that is more purposeful, that is more important. What we have to realize is that addiction is touching every damn family in America.
For sure.
It's either your friend, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, your mom, or your dad, your brother or sister, or son or daughter. But not enough people are talking about it. Because families are like, keep it inside, don't air our dirty laundry, because we want our neighbors and our people at our church to think that we're the most upright, tight family. You know?
We have it together.
But the fact of the matter is, could you imagine if everybody just dropped that and said, my daughter's battling heroin, my son's addicted to pain pills, or my dad's an alcoholic. Suddenly, we connect. You and I didn't connect because we were at a bar.
No.
Right? We connect with others through our battle wounds, through our battle scars, through our traumas. That's how we connect with other people. Right? So if everybody did that, then we start to create a community of a woven web of support. Right? And I tell other talent, I tell other reporters, looking at their social media, I'm like, dude, does anything bad happen in your life? Like, for real. Because you give off this idea of perfection. Let me tell you this. Viewers don't relate to that.
No.
Viewers' lives are not perfect. Which is probably why I'm able to have a good connection with viewers. Keep it fucking real.
That's what people want.
My goal, my hope, and my purpose is to help that person suffering in silence to just make it a safer space and an easier space for them to come forward. That's it. I know that's my purpose in life. Otherwise, I'd be dead.
With everything going on with COVID, you know, we've done a lot of work with Department of Health Services. We've seen a lot of research from kids. We've gone to communities and seen heroin addicts and talked to them about why they're heroin addicts. I think right now mental health will be the biggest challenge of our world.
For years to come.
What are we supposed to do? Like, are we on a spiritual awakening, do you think? I see so many good things, but I still see a lot of kind of heads in the sand a little bit. But I see this wave, you know, certainly coming. What are your thoughts?
You know, I tell people all the time, the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
So then you look at the pandemic and the isolation, the forced isolation that created. Connection was ripped away from all of us, which is why we had a record amount of overdoses and a record amount of overdose deaths over this past year. And this pandemic is still not over. In many parts of the world and in parts of our country. I mean, Arizona is the Wild West, so like, you know, it's whatever you do here, you know, it's been that way from the very beginning of this pandemic.
It has.
But, you know, my concern when I read that on the news, when we first had those stay-at-home orders, Scott, we did stories and people were like, I need to go get my hair cut. I need to go to the gym. I need to go to this. I was like, shut up. Because from a mental health aspect, I'm like, I don't care about your haircut. I don't care about you going to the, you know, that your gym's closed for a month. What I cared about, what I knew immediately was, oh my God, so many people are going to relapse. So many people are going to die. Because if you take away that connection, addicts will spin in their heads and they'll use to numb, to not feel that isolation, not feel that pain. I do worry about the youth generation. Not being able to be in high school, not having those athletics, not having those high school sports, right? It's going to have a huge impact on their mental health. What I would have loved to see as part of the COVID relief deal, I would have loved to see that money be used to put a trained psychologist and certified trauma therapist at every public school in America. Every public school in America.
Why don't they do that?
There's no reason why we can't.
Is there some
we're talking about, like, what was that, like $2 or $3 trillion in COVID relief? Where was the mental health aspect, and where was the counselors on campus? And I don't know. There's no answer to that. I mean, I would never. But if I really wanted to run for politics, it would strictly be on a mental health campaign.
I agree with you.
Because it's nonpartisan.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It doesn't care.
For sure.
Addiction doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat.
For sure.
So I look at that and I'm like, why don't we have, because you have to understand therapy is expensive.
Very.
And not everyone has health insurance. I'm privileged, so I have it.
Yeah.
But a majority of people are not.
Yeah.
So what are we doing for those people who need a counselor, but their parents can't afford it? So their child's in 6th or 7th grade who's suffered trauma, who likely will become violent, will become a drug addict, all because of unhealed childhood trauma that they never even had the opportunity to heal from.
I talk to so many people, they don't even know, like, from a counseling perspective. I've been in counseling similar to you, not anywhere near your story, but I've been in for 6 years.
Yeah.
And a ton of people, like, know a little bit about my story too, and they're like, I don't even know, like, how, like, do you have a counselor you'd recommend? Like, they're so scared of picking the wrong counselor or the wrong therapist. Like, people they can't even wrap their mind around, like, where to start with that. And I guess that makes sense. You know, I went to rehab and I just, like, dove in. I'm just, like, trying shit, you know, and just like, some are good, some are bad, try this, try that. But a lot of other people maybe that aren't, like, at least where I felt my bottom was, don't have that option or something. So I'm wondering if, like, maybe people don't know where to start in that world.
And I'll even be honest with you, like, I've thought about it. I'm like, God, if I can't see Pat or Toby, like, do I have to start all over with, like, another therapist?
Yeah,
and,
that's
like,
frightening.
It's exhausting because I'm like, you mean to tell me that what I honestly would want to do is just go, hey, dude, go read my book. And then after you read my book, then let's just start from there.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it can be exhausting to think, like, I have to go back from day one so this person can understand my perspective on can be exhausting.
But we're going to have a shortage of therapists and counselors. There's no way.
Yeah, and not all therapists are created equal.
Did you do it? I'm ADD, but
I love ADD.
Did you do EMDR at all?
I did.
What did you think about that?
I love it. Here's the thing. So EMDR is a modality, just to get back to you, into the lower amygdala, the lower amygdala where that trauma is stored. It's a modality to get you back there. So the reason is this. Talk therapy is all frontal lobe. This is where we rationalize as adults. For example, when I was 14 years old living in Laguna Beach, there was no West Hollywood up in Los Angeles. Okay?
Yeah.
That didn't exist when I was growing up in Orange County. The gay mecca of California was Laguna Beach. That's where I grew up. I used to walk down to the Boom Boom Room. It's an old gay bar and club at age 14. I used to walk down. I used to have sex with men in their 40s and 50s. Okay. So I was in therapy recently, like in the last 7 years. And I told my therapist that, and she goes, "You were raped." And I said, "No, I wasn't. I wanted that. Like, I walked down to the bar. Like, I wanted it. Like, I enjoyed it. I walked down and I had sex with all these guys." Brandon, how old were you? 14. How old were they? 40 and 50. Brandon, you were raped. The rational side, the frontal lobe, is always going to try to rationalize all of our behavior and talk therapy.
100%.
EMDR, all that's doing is distracting the frontal lobe, distracting it in order for the therapist to get back to.
That's what those buzzers are for.
That's what they are. I could do bilateral simulation right here.
Just to get back in there.
Give me 10 minutes of doing this. It'll distract my frontal lobe and it'll get me back there. So people use different.
It's not in the limbic system.
It's all. This is where we store it back here.
What's it called?
They call it the lower amygdala.
amygdala.
Yeah.
Because I thought the limbic system.
And it's part of it, right? So it's all this storage area right
your
back here.
emotional deal is limbic, and then it goes to the frontal cortex.
Then it goes to the frontal cortex.
But they're stored in this.
This is where it's stored because we go into survival mode. That's the way our animalistic bodies are made, right? So when we go into survival
crocodile
mode,
brain, they call it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because it's animalistic to be in survival mode. So when I'm repeatedly abused or sexually abused or something traumatic happens, I can't do anything about it as a child. I can't stand up for myself. I can't fight back. So what's the only way to survive? Store it, delete it, and store it and forget about it, thinking it's deleted, but it still lives.
Because your body, I heard about a book about your body always knows
the score. Keeps the score. Your body keeps the score.
That's right. Because your body, if you hypnotize, go back, your body will remember the shit.
Correct. That's exactly what that is. So when you talk about bilateral simulation, people do it on horses down at Sabino Recovery. It's a great treatment center down at Sabino. They'll do horse therapy, but then they'll also do bilateral simulation on the horse. You can actually.
Did you see when the horses? I went to see our Tucson.
Oh yeah, which is right there.
Right there. Yeah. And they took me out, did some horse area, and they had one horse that was like putting air in his throat, or his or her throat, and they were giving themselves a high. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not see that.
I was like, holy cow, this is insane. Yeah.
But here's the thing.
And they would stand there all day and you see the horse getting high by
but pushing oxygen.
Yeah, pushing a bunch of oxygen in their brain.
And so, you people have heard of ayahuasca and using LSD.
For sure.
Okay, they did that back in the 70s. Trained therapists used, MDMA. They used LSD.
To go back into
psychedelics. Why are they using psychedelics?
Get out of the frontal lobe.
Getting past the frontal lobe in order to get back here. So people pay to go on those journeys, an ayahuasca journey with a guide.
Correct.
All that's doing is getting these folks past here, back here. That's all that is.
Which is, of course, why it helps addiction.
Correct.
It can help addiction.
It can.
Yeah.
Yes. So my shaman does that on the side, like outside of practice. You can't legally do drugs in practice because of the federal government. And with me, with the drug past, is it something that I want to risk? Is it something that I want to dabble in? But he told me, he goes, I can get you there through oxygen.
I've heard that too. Breathing, I've heard there's breathing exercises to get you the same place.
I did it yesterday.
Interesting. Yeah. How long were you breathing for?
15 minutes, and I dropped in.
And 15 minutes you're in.
And I don't meditate. I've never been a meditator. I don't do yoga. Is it like
the deep, heavy breathing kind of?
So there's two trained techniques.
Yeah.
I do nose and mouth open. It's more of an advanced technique now, and it gets you down there real quick. And it's 2 breaths in, 1 long breath out. So it's.
Yeah.
Do it for 15 minutes. He's guiding. He's there. But
did your body kind of tingle?
It does.
Yeah. I tried this in Sedona one time. It was crazy.
Yeah. Your body starts to tingle. Sometimes if you're really doing the breathing technique right, that's a lot of times that tingling is coming from the oxygen, not getting enough oxygen and blowing too much out. But you can actually do it. Like yesterday I did it and my body did not tingle, but I dropped in. I had the most intense session yesterday.
Wow. That's the first time that makes so much sense about the frontal lobe, because I've done EMDR. I've tried ayahuasca, which was a great experience for me. But scary.
For sure.
Very scary.
But that's why, Dr. Sue Sisley, she's a former University of Arizona professor. She is one of the nation's leading researchers on marijuana and PTSD. They're actually studying and they're doing microdosing with shrooms to treat people with PTSD. Right? Get past here, go back here, and heal. So again, there's a ton of modalities out there. So if one modality does not work, move on to another one. All those modalities are doing is distracting to heal.
Does everybody have childhood trauma?
Does everyone? No. I would think that not everyone has it, but I think a lot of people. This is the issue when we start talking about trauma that people get lost on. A divorce can be very traumatic for a child.
Correct.
50% of all marriages end in divorce.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Dad cheats on mom, mom cheats on dad.
Yeah.
That can be very traumatic for a child.
Yes.
Right? These little things. I got called makeup boy and mascara boy as a child. I got called girly voice because it looks like I wear eyeliner. I don't. I have really heavy eyelashes, right?
See, my girlfriend asked me that, and my girlfriend asked me last night, like, does he wear,
No. So I have actually...
That's the deal, because I haven't read the book yet.
It's actually a condition, and I have 3 rows of eyelashes on which cast a shadow. regardless.
And so in school, people called you that?
Oh my God, makeup boy, mascara boy, which is why I titled my book. All growing up.
So to get that shame out of there, that's why you titled the book the way you did?
100%. Because I was like, what you used to bully me by has no impact on me anymore. So it's kind of a fuck you to them.
Kind of. That's okay. That makes sense now.
That's where mascara boy comes from. So I tell people I was bullied. That bullying impacted me. I was traumatic. Think how much childhood bullying is happening.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? Your kids are online.
Yeah.
They could be bullied and you don't even know about it, and they're being traumatized.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of traumatic events that happen out there. It's why I go back to my original point, never compare traumas. Because again, what could be traumatic to that person may not be traumatic to the other kid, but it's still traumatic. And whatever that was, if it goes unhealed or not talked about, it'll set them up. It will always surface. You know, you hear about people, I didn't have a drink until I was 40. You can have an adult trauma. For example, I lived in New York on 9/11, right? I was on the subway on my way to NBC News that morning, and the subway stopped because I lived in Lower Manhattan. I lived in Wall Street.
Wow.
I lived in one of the NYU apartments on Water Street, and I had to take the C train up to work to 30 Rock. And I was on the train that morning. I got up. We had to escape out of the sewer gates. I saw and smelled things that no human should ever experience in their life. Did I ever go to therapy? No. Brandon, that is a traumatic event that I didn't heal from until 2016, 15 years after. All I did was just get more heavily into booze and drugs. But again, like, I never would have thought, like, yeah, I lived through 9/11, but is that really what's setting me sideways?
Yeah.
All that stuff comes.
Your frontal cortex is always...
all that stuff comes, right? All that stuff. I used to be violently woken up sometimes by my mom at night. It's one of the reasons why I still have issues sleeping at night. But I'm trying to heal from that so I can sleep through the night.
This is insane. I love talking. I'm like just thinking, honestly, like I'm just like, I don't even know if I'm doing the podcast at this point. I'm just like listening. Just so many questions about it, because it's so interesting. I do think I love your purpose because I just like, and I'm not even on the same level. Like, I went to rehab. Okay, cool. But like, people are so curious. Like, you get people away from the pack and they're like,
oh yeah,
what was it like? Like, you know, and then like, there's like this secret, like, society of people who have had this experience, who are sharing, who are connecting, who like, or I think have had this like awakening that like I feel from you, you know, and people are connecting with you, but it's not mainstream yet.
It's not. And I'll tell you how not mainstream it is. It's the reason why I walked away from AA.
I agree with you about AA too. You know, right away we talked about that the other day.
And here's the thing. And
AA is great, but
AA is great. Ready? AA is great. Don't at me. Don't come at me. AA is great.
No, it is. It is.
I never went to treatment. I never went to rehab.
It's still the most successful.
And I should have gone to treatment. I tell people all the time, there's a stigma around treatment because I knew I would have lost my job. If I have 100%. To say I'm going to rehab or I'm going to treatment,
yes,
there's a stigma attached to that. Oh, you really fucked up. Oh, you that fucked up. You went to treatment, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I didn't. So what did I do? I white knuckled. I just went to meetings every day. Did it keep me sober? Yes, it did. I white knuckled for far too many years. Now, here's the thing. When I wrote my book and I went on MSNBC.
White knuckling, for people don't know what white knuckling is.
White knuckling is just like you're scraping
you're just
by.
Powering through.
You're like, I'm not going to drink a drug today. Rather than just being peace, right? I look at my life today and I'm like, okay, as long as my life is flatlined, I don't need some up and down roller coaster.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I tell people this all the time. I'm like, okay, there are 24 million addicts in America. 2 million go to AA, right?
Wow.
Okay, 2 million. There's 24 million out there. So I go to AA meetings and everybody's going up there and this whole anonymous thing. And I'm like, okay, well, y'all are just preaching to each other. Y'all are just helping each other. There are 22 million other addicts out there that need help who will never discover these rooms.
Yeah.
So what are we doing to help them?
Yeah.
So when I wrote my book, I was on MSNBC, CNN, I was all over. Every time these people would ask me, how'd you get sober? I went to AA. I had so many old timers come at me saying you're violating the 11 tradition. You're not supposed to be in the media talking about AA and how it helped you.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that. I forgot that was a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's the 11 tradition. So I got hit. I got hated on by so many people that I said, you know what, listen, I respect and love AA enough for what it did for me.
Yeah.
That I will respect all the traditions, and because I am violating, because I will absolutely not stop speaking out.
That's insane.
So, and I'm not going to lie to somebody, nor am I going to play cagey games of saying, well, I went to a 12-step recovery program. Bullshit. I went to AA. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
It is my truth. And so here's the other thing. And people have different beliefs about why anonymity exists within AA. There's multiple beliefs. Here's mine. Anonymity in and of itself is rooted in shame. Why else would I have to be anonymous? Why else? The reason why there's anonymity is because the stigma around addiction is that strong.
Correct.
So if I work as an accountant for a huge firm and I go to my boss and say, hey, I'm an alcoholic, right? There's a fear that I'm going to lose my job.
For sure.
Right. Okay. So I've got to now go to a meeting. I've got to lie about my life to my boss and right? It's rooted in shame.
Yeah, for sure.
So here's what I tell everybody. The reason why there's a stigma that drug addicts are homeless, washed up people, not successful, is because not enough successful people with drug addiction in their past who have recovery are speaking out.
Correct. And I've also noticed too, like there's like this, everyone has like, they want to put, like, people want to label and they want to put you in boxes. Like, I'm in marketing, right? So, like, that shit, we're just trained to do that, right? And so, like, you know, I love what you talk about the childhood traumas, because I agree that that's how to overcome addiction.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like, what my addiction looks like when I know I'm not aligned and I'm not on my straight and narrow, what that looks like for me is different than what that might look like for someone else, right? So, like, if I have a beer, someone's like, oh, I thought you went to rehab. Like, right. You know, but, like, that's not my thing. Like, right. I have my own guide of knowing where I'm at. But 100%. Everyone wants to put you, like, you're an alcoholic. You're, like, the labels to all this shit.
Right. And there are absolutely those categories. And what I tell people, too, is, dude, because I speak at treatment centers weekly.
Yeah.
I tell them all the time. I'm like, dude, do not compare his program to your program.
Yeah.
Enough. Because there's not a one size fits all.
100%. But we want that.
See,
I was even scared, like, when I like talked to you on the phone, I knew your background, I knew the AA background. Like, yeah, I didn't drink for a year and a half, but, like, I'll have drinks now.
Yeah.
Like, I was scared about that. Like, I had like I don't know if it was shame, but, like, something came up. I was like, oh shit, I don't want to say this.
Oh, a majority of them will judge you.
100%
for it.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the most. Here's the other thing. So I'm a gay man. Shocking, right?
We're in a wormhole here, but
right.
That's
okay. Shocking. I'm a gay man. So I used to go to gay meetings. Okay. So in AA, if you're going to be a sponsor to somebody, they have to be of the same sex. So if you're a straight man, you go to your straight man meeting. You now, as a straight man, you're not allowed to have a woman as your sponsor, because there could be sexual tension there and a lot of not so good stuff.
Yes.
Well, as a gay man going to a gay meeting, all my sponsors were gay men.
Uh-huh.
So what I was observing so often was a lot of 13-stepping.
Yeah.
And a lot of older gay men coming to the newbie. I'll be your sponsor. But I chose.
What's 13 stepping? I don't know.
13 stepping is when an old timer goes after somebody who's brand new to the program.
Wow.
And they go after him and have sex with them.
Wow.
That's 13 stepping. So I chose a lesbian. She was a former Marine lesbian, so she was my sponsor.
Keep you on your shit.
Yeah, keep me on my shit. And there's no sexual tension coming between us.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I can't come back to these rooms. And she goes, why? And I told her, I said, every time guys are grabbing my ass, they're coming and giving me a kiss on the lips, like they're touching me inappropriately. And I was like, being molested, essentially groped.
Yes.
Call it molestation. It doesn't matter. At meetings.
Oh my gosh.
So that's when I was just like, I started going to straight meetings. And it was just such an uncomfortableness. But here's the other thing too, is that for me, I believe that you can graduate.
For sure. Yeah.
Holy cow. If you say that, I'm sure that there's people from
you're an addict for life. You're an addict for life.
No.
Yeah. Like that's shame. That's shameful. You're an addict for life.
Like, they were like, yeah, you're going to have to come to these meetings for the rest of your life. And I believed in that. I truly believed in that.
I did too. Yeah.
But let me tell you this, like, I am going to get so much hate on, and I do. And I'm used to it.
That's just life, right? Is that just life?
But I tell people, Absolutely, you can recover from this. It's why I don't tell people I'm an addict.
Yeah.
If I ever have to qualify, I am a recovered addict.
Yeah.
I'm not an addict.
Yeah.
So stop, because my therapist challenged me on that. She goes, stop telling people you're a drug addict because you are what you say you are.
Yeah, I agree
And if you
with that.
repeat that over and over, you will become that.
I can't agree more.
She goes, so stop.
Yeah.
And I challenged her because I saw the A mentality. I'm like, no, I can't do that. I was always told I'm an addict for the rest of my life. I want to write a book called The Graduate because I do believe with the right modalities
Yes.
and science,
Yes.
okay, science has made leaps and bounds from the 1950s.
Yes.
You can heal
Yeah.
from this and you can graduate from AA and live a normal life. Mm-hmm. Just like you are. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to judge you because you drink a beer.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, I could probably go out and drink. I just don't like the taste of beer, but I could probably go out and drink. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it does not matter.
Yeah.
And so what I tell people is stop judging people. First off, let's create a safe space and stop judging people. But I do believe you have the ability to heal.
I love that.
But here's the problem. I see a lot of sickness in AA and a lot of unhealed trauma. But they are going to meetings and they're doing step work. The lived experience that I had working with a shaman, doing that spiritual healing, going back to the inner child and working with my certified trauma therapist, that's where the healing begins.
Correct.
That's where the healing does. That's where that begins. Doing a 4-step isn't healing you.
You're doing steps.
You're doing steps.
Yeah.
It's all here.
Yeah, yeah. You're not emotionally diving
Here's
in.
what I also say is, why is there so much relapse in AA then? Why is there, and that's alcohol. Let's go to NA, Narcotics Anonymous, or CMA, Crystal Meth Anonymous. There's no more than like 2 years sobriety up in there before people are relapsing. So I challenge them. It's not working. So why isn't it working? Because people aren't truly healing from the trauma. You may get 5-10 years of recovery.
Yeah.
But it'll resurface.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why you hear about people.
You're gonna
5, 10, 15 years, they relapse.
Well, you're going to go through shit. You're going to get triggered by shit.
Exactly. Yeah. And it all comes back to unhealed child parts.
Correct.
And so until those are healed, you're still going to be triggered.
Correct.
Go back and heal and you can...
Can we talk about... I want to talk about the light and the dark a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that kind of like... That took me back a little bit. Do you think we all have like light and dark within us? And is it just accepting that, or is there like, do you heal dark, or like, I mean, that kind of threw me off a little bit, like,
about how dark I went.
Well, just like the satanic stuff, or like right, or like I've like had the dark like come out, like I don't know, I'm a curious person, so that like that like kind of was like, okay, what is that? Because we all have darkness in us, like at all times, even when we're on the straight and narrow, right?
100%.
Do we embrace that? I think we accept it.
I think we have a little bit of a dark side, and I think that there's nothing wrong. I don't know. I mean, 'cause so many people could have different dark sides. Like, your HR person could be like 50 Shades of Grey on the other side when she goes home at night. You don't know, and maybe that's like shameful and dark to her.
But like in a healthy, committed relationship, like accepting that, not being shameful about that, like maybe that's okay. That's what I'm curious about, I guess. For you,
it's crazy. Like if you see pictures of me as like a little boy, it's like the happiest glow. Like the sweetest little boy. It's what's thrown so many people off who knew me as a... In fact, my therapist was looking at my childhood pictures on Tuesday, and it was robbed from me. I think my darkness was really born out of a lot of physical abuse.
Is it anger?
100%.
It's anger.
Anger. When I told you that I woke up out of that first session with my shaman, and I woke up out of it, and my shirt was ripped like Hulk Hogan, like ripped. And I was like, what happened? And he looked at me and he goes, Brandon, you have a lot of anger. Mm. This was in January.
Wow.
And he goes, you have a lot of anger still locked up in there.
At the perpetrators?
And my parents.
At your parents.
And my parents. How I started hanging out with Satan worshipers, man, I don't know. I don't know, other than I can look at it now and say, like, that's how dark it got for me.
Yeah.
And look at the light that I'm standing in now.
Yeah.
It's that beautiful song, Gravity by John Mayer, is like, keep me in the light.
Yeah.
Let me find the light and keep me there in the light. I just want people to know that, like, I understand dark, and it's okay.
Yeah.
That you've been in that dark. Don't let that darkness shroud you in such shame that you can't share it with somebody. And mind you, I didn't share even the satanic stuff until in an AA room until 9 months sober.
That's funny. There's still layers of it. Like maybe for me, I can relate to that. Of like, I think I share enough, but like I think I always want to hold a little something back. You know.
And what I will say this is that, I mean, I used to never tell people I was bug chasing, trying to get HIV. But, when I speak around the country and I talk about that, guys would come up to me all the time. They're like, I've never heard somebody share that, but thank you, because I did the same thing. The reason why I'm so open about it is because, like, I want to, one of the most beautiful lessons that I ever learned is what your opinion of me is none of my business. You're
That's
like,
so hard. How were you able to finally embrace that?
Yeah. Because trust me, I get hit up.
For a news anchor too, that's insane.
I get picked at by some viewers for sure, especially in the last year, with the pandemic and an election, which was hell.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
It was hell. It almost drew me to the end.
Really? Like,
just career wise. I was like, really? This is what I'm waking up to deal with every day?
People hit you up with just like criticism all the time?
Insane. I got 2 yesterday. I don't like your color tie. It doesn't complement your skin color. I just laugh.
I get like Glassdoor things from former employees, and it used to like crush me.
Oh yeah.
Now it'll still ting me, but not as bad. I think I just have to get used to it, I guess.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not perfect. My birthday was on Saturday.
Happy birthday!
Thank you. I just got to get more Botox because I just don't want to. I don't want to be in my 40s. But listen, I did not hear from my parents on my birthday. I didn't get a text message. I got nothing. And I told my therapist, I'm like, the rational Brandon was like, well, of course they didn't. You've been estranged with them for years, but that little inner child got hurt. Mm-hmm. That little boy is still connected to mom and dad, got hurt over the weekend. I was sad a little bit, being like, damn, like my own fucking blood doesn't even, and when I told my parents that I was a drug addict, they never once called me to ask me, are you still sober?
Wow.
Like after 9 months clean, they didn't even know I was a drug addict. And I told them that I was on life support and everything. My mom called me the week later and goes, you need to stop telling people you were on life support. I just talked to my psychic and she says that wasn't true. You were never even close to death. Kid, I'm like, mind you, mom, I will always love my mom for all the good that she gave me, but she does suffer from mental health. And so, I think that's going back to your original point about where we find that darkness and the light. I just think that a lot of that happened to me as a child, and I was just so perverted by too many people in my life from so many different aspects.
And you're angry about that, and
angry.
Parents.
And I was gay. I was a gay athlete. Like, just imagine like going to Catholic high school in the 80s and 90s, and being an athlete and a pretty good one, and knowing I was gay. And hearing everybody go faggot, that. It's all around you. Your nuns and your priests are telling you you're going to burn in hell. And so I just, that's
a lot.
That was so dark for me. I used to go home after I'd be in Laguna Beach and hooking up with those older men. I used to go home, stand in my bathroom, and start beating myself until my chest turned black and blue. Because that's how much shame and anger I had in me, And that's why I try to tell people, get into therapy as soon as you can, even after you move out of your parents' house, and just try to deal with that stuff early on. What I am happy about is a lot of the toxic, what do they call it now? Like toxic
shame?
Hetero, it's like guys, toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah.
About vulnerability with men.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And seeking therapy and doing those things. It used to be so taboo.
Yeah.
I can't even blame my parents. They probably treated me the way because they have unhealed trauma from their childhood. Of course, so I look at my parents more empathetically now than I do toward resentment, right?
I've gotten to that place.
Yeah. It took me a while.
For sure.
It took me a while.